everyone, I hope you're all doing really well and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So we've been working our way through this badger tutorial. This is actually the last part of this tutorial as well. I have left a link to part 1 in the video description below. So if you want to follow through right from the start, then the link to that part 1 is down below. If you're new here, then I'm Becca. I'm a professional pet portrait and wildlife artist specialising in realistic coloured pencil drawings of pets and animals and wildlife. So we're just literally going to be finishing off from where we left off last time. I think we've done most of the body. It's just now about fading off that final bit to make it look really gradual and really soft towards those edges. So I'm going to go in first with the cold grey 4, and you want to work kind of from like this really dark pigment that we've got down already and just kind of elongate that into the pan pastel that we can see that's laid underneath. Because remember, we're working on drafting film for this one, but we have layered Fabriano paper underneath and then added that pan pastel on top of that. See what I mean there? Just put that back down. So yeah, just work into what we've got so far with that cold grey 4. Kind of want to flick at the end of each of your pencil strokes to get that really like wispy, soft, gradual effect. You know, we want it to look as subtle and faded as possible towards those edges. Now this bottom right hand section, it kind of goes lighter and then a little bit darker again. So you can bring that darker pigment slightly more towards that outer edge, but still sort of fade it off and keep your pencil strokes really light and wispy. I've mentioned this in previous parts as well, but I'm also using like the bluntest, flattest part of the pencil. Once you start shading with it, even if you go in initially with like a really sharp pencil, it will quite quickly wear down on one side. And that's the side that you want to keep shading with, because it'll give you a much more like even coverage and a much softer line to shade with as well. Because everything's like really out of focus, especially around these edges. We don't really want any pinpoint sharp pencils. Like you only really need that when you're doing these kind of really tight hair details. what we're trying to achieve here is like a completely different texture, so keep everything as soft and as blunt as possible. I'd probably say actually that this part of the tutorial is probably one of the most difficult areas to draw, just to like really achieve that subtle, like out of focus, blurry kind of effect towards those edges is quite difficult to do on drafting film, because like I say, it does pick up like, you know, every single pencil stroke that you add on, so it's amazing for detail. But that's why I like to include those pan pastels behind it, because it gives you that really soft finish like behind your drawing, that's quite difficult to achieve just by using colour pencils alone on this surface. That's the only thing I'd say. It's a lot easier to achieve that kind of blurry effect on like Fabriano paper or something like that. But yeah, that's kind of why I do the pan pastels first. But yeah, you just need to be super controlled with this bit. Just build everything up really gradually and have some of that pan pastel still showing through along the like very outer edge. So that already has made a massive difference in terms of like the softness of those edges. Colours actually do blend really well on drafting film. It's just you have to kind of apply them really delicately, like layer by layer, rather than kind of smudging them together like we would do on other papers. So yeah, how you work is kind of very different on drafting film compared with other papers. If you actually have tried drafting film for this tutorial, and maybe it's like one of your first times of trying it, then, you know, let me know how you find it, because a lot of artists either love it or hate it, and it's interesting to know, like, you know, what you thought of it. It took me a while to get used to it, but now I absolutely love it. I don't work on this for commissions, but I've done quite a few tutorials now working on drafting film, simply because you can achieve such like realism, and obviously that's something I'm really interested in, like really kind of elevating that realistic element using coloured pencils. So yeah, this surface is a really good surface to work on if, you know, detail and precision is something that like you're really interested in, or something that you want to kind of develop in your work. Focusing on those edges even more, I'm going to use a mixture of the cold grey one and the warm grey one, which are both really, really pale colours, so perfect just for softening that edge even more. I'm going to start with the cold grey one, and you want to kind of shade along the edges where we kind of finished with that cold grey 4. Just extend that shading a little bit, but obviously because it's a paler colour, it'll just add that softness. Be a bit more of a gradual finish to the colour. So by shading over the edge where we finished with that cold grey 4, we're kind of blurring it. So it's kind of more difficult to see when you look at it as a whole, you know, where the body actually finishes, the more gradual it looks, which is what we want. Just takes a long time to kind of get there. Then you want to go in with your warm grey one. Basically go over the same areas. I think it's always important to have a mixture of like cooler and warmer tones when it comes to white fur and black fur. Just gives it a bit more depth and it makes it look a lot more realistic. I think if you just go in with more of one than the other, it can end up looking quite flat. So it's important to include like little bits of colour in there as well. I'm going to be using some more vibrant colours in a minute. So again, just working along that edge using the flat side of the pencil, just very delicately, just building up that edge a little bit more. After I finish this today, I'm recording this in the morning, but this afternoon I'm going to start recording my next tutorial for Patreon. Now every month I always do a bit of like a vote or a poll, so my patrons can vote for what they want to do for that particular month, and then I'll always go with the most popular. So this month they had the option between, I think, a hedgehog, a red deer, a sheep and a rooster. Kind of bringing it all back to British wildlife. But we've done like African wildlife, we've done a lot of cats and dogs in the past as well, and birds. But yeah, I thought for this month we'd bring it back to British wildlife. So they were the 4 options, and the rooster was the most popular. So that's what I'm going to be starting to record this afternoon for Patreon. And I'm so excited to start it. I think because it's like, it's got so many colours in it, and it's also good practice drawing feathers as well. So I think, yeah, this month will be a really good tutorial on Patreon. So if you've enjoyed this badger tutorial, there's literally, I know I've mentioned this in every single part already, but I've literally got over 2.5 years worth of animal-based colour pencil tutorials over on Patreon. And there's also, you know, focus tutorials, art business tips, materials videos where I do reviews on different materials, pencils, different surfaces. There's just, everything's on there. And yeah, I absolutely love it. I love teaching, and I also do like one-to-one critiques as well. So if you ever want me to look at either something you've drawn from my tutorial, or you want me to look at something that you're working on for your own sort of stuff, then I'll be happy to look at that as well. But yeah, the link to my Patreon is in the video description below. So if you're interested in more tutorials and stuff like this and developing your colour pencil skills, then maybe have a look at that. I've also got a section on my website which literally lists all my in-depth tutorials. So ones like this where it's start to finish split into parts. I've literally got a list on my website and a picture of each one. Along with how long the tutorial is, how many parts it's split into, and a link to the materials list for each individual tutorial. So if you're wanting to try something, you can always, you know, look at the materials list and get the colours and materials that you need beforehand, so you can be prepared before you start working through it. But yeah, just thought I'd mention that in case you're interested in more. But I will be doing more tutorials like this for YouTube as well. I think, you know, you seem to really enjoy them. So yeah, I'll carry on doing them for YouTube as well. They just might not be as frequent because obviously I've got my Patreon ones to do every month. Now you might notice that some of the pan pastel that we have layered underneath the drafting film, so the pan pastel that's on that Fabriano paper underneath, the edges, if I just lift this up slightly, the edges might look slightly uneven. I don't know, it might be a bit of both really, but we can always go in with a rubber and just kind of work into the edges just to soften that out even more as well, just as an extra little bit. So I'm really happy with how those edges are looking now. They're much softer. So what we want to do now is keep building up this really dark fur kind of in the middle and just underneath the face. Really build that up, make it really dark, and it also include some of those more vibrant colours in there to make it look like more realistic. So I'm going to start by going in with the dark indigo, which is a really dark blue colour, and you just want to work into that dark colour we've got down already, kind of along the edge of the face, and just work that into that lighter pigment that we've got to the right of it. Again, keep your pencil super light pressured and use the flat side of the tip of the pencil. I know I've gone in with a really sharp pencil, but like I said, it will very quickly kind of wear down if you use it at an angle on its side. So I'm kind of bringing it down all the way along like the chest and the neck area of the badger. Next up, I'm going to go in with the dark sepia, which is a really dark brown colour, and just continue to build up that dark fur just underneath the face and on the chest area as well. So I think I mentioned in the previous part that there's like really subtle lighter bits within like the dark chest area of fur. So you just want to leave them or kind of shade round them a little bit just so they stand out so we can see where they are. But we are going to keep them fairly dull. We don't want them to stand out too much, but it's just an opportunity for us to get some like vibrant colours in there and make areas look like they're slightly being hit by the light. Next up I'm going to go in with the warm grey 4 and again just kind of work into those edges just to keep everything looking really blended and kind of gradual. So you also want to work into this lighter section of fur on the left hand side. We can see some of the tufts and textures of the fur, but keep them quite kind of quite loose by just shading over the same area a couple of times. Keep that line quite thick, keep it kind of quite sketchy as well. I'm also going to go in with the walnut brown, and this is where you want to work into these like lighter tufts in like the dark chest area. I think adding a bit of brown and a bit of blue and like purpley tones always bring the black fur to life. There's always a lot of colours going on within black fur. It's just kind of pulling them out where you can. So anywhere else in the fur where you can see subtle tints of brown, you want to add this colour. I'm briefly going to go in with the dark indigo again and just bring some of those like really dark blue tones back up to the surface in some areas. We're kind of gradually making everything darker, but we also want to keep like tinting areas as well, using these more vibrant colours. Next up, I'm going to go in with the manganese violet. Now this obviously is really vibrant, but I'm just going to use this basically everywhere where we've just added that dark indigo, just to make those like blue tones look a bit more lilac-y. Like I say, it's always good to include like subtle pops of colour here and there within both black fur and white fur, because it just really helps to capture the light in and makes it look a lot more realistic and less flat. It's very tempting to want to keep kind of going right down to the edge, but I'm trying to leave at least like 1.5 centimetres for it to kind of fade off. So from this really dark pigment to like the very edge, you want to leave roughly about that amount, obviously depending on what size you're working on. But for me, this is 11 by 11 inches. Maybe a tiny little bit on the right hand side as well. So I don't know if it's picking it up overly well on the camera, but when I kind of take a step back and look at all of this really dark fur, like as a whole, we can see like pops of brown, we can see a little bit of like purpley blue tones as well, which is exactly what we wanted before we go in with the black, just to make everything really dark, and we, you know, definitely get that contrast in there. Just to make everything as dark as we can, especially like just underneath the face to get that contrast. So I'm going to go in with the black then now and literally work just underneath the face and in those darkest areas of the fur. Working around all of these smaller tufts that are falling in front of the chest area from like the edges of the face. Like we did up here as well, where we can see certain tufts within the fur, but you want to keep those shapes quite loose. You want to do the same round here as well. So just very lightly do like small oval or circular motions and just kind of blur that line, but roughly draw in those shapes that are going to represent those kind of individual tufts and a bit of the texture of the fur as well. So we're pretty much there with it now. It's just all about those finishing touches. So I'm going to go in with the warm grey 3 and not drop it like that. And you want to work into those like outer edges, so that lighter bit of fur that's being hit by the light. Just like make that look a bit more full by working into that area. Again, just keeping your pressure quite light and keeping your pencil strokes delicate. Maybe like working in and around some of these soft shapes we've got to kind of indicate those tufts and those textures of the fur. What we want to do now is draw in those whiskers. So there's like 3 main ones on this side, and then these ones on the right hand side are a bit more subtle. So we've really built up those layers, and on drafting film anyway, the craft knife slice tool works exceptionally well. We used it in the face already for those like really tight fine details, just to pull out those highlights. So it kind of works the same way, but basically when it comes to whiskers, I always like to sort of start off where you can see it starting in the reference photo, look at where it finishes, and then you just want to kind of head in that direction, but do it quite quickly, and so it creates that wispy line. It looks a lot more natural that way and a lot more realistic. I think if you spend too long trying to perfect, you know, exactly the right direction it's going in and stuff like that to make it absolutely perfect to the reference photo, it can end up looking a bit wobbly and then it doesn't look as natural. So yeah, when it comes to whiskers, that's my advice if you want it to look more realistic. So I'm going to start off kind of around there. It also makes you see other things that you might need tweaking as well, like I've just found. So I'm just going to quickly go in with the black just to bring this little bit up a little bit. Just to bring that up. I think I've brought it out a bit too much and down. So yeah, something like that, just tweaking it. So yeah, I'm gonna start from around here, I think, like something like that, and I can see that it ends sort of over there and it goes mainly into this dark area. So something like that, kind of curves round at the end as well. Then you want to flick your line at the end. So I'm going to map out where they are first, all of these whiskers, and do the next one, more of like a wavy line, then one underneath that. Also look at like the distance between them as well, kind of judge it that way. And there's some more subtle ones like just behind them that you can't really see as well. The line is a lot fainter, but you still want to draw those in. And there's quite a lot around the mouth. With the craft knife slice tool, it's a ceramic blade on the end, and it's got a curved edge and a pointier edge that you can use to create different marks. I always find if you use the curved edge for whiskers, it gives you a slighter thicker line. You only really want to use the pointy edge when you're working on something that's super small and intricate. So for these whiskers, the curved edge is probably better and will show up a little bit better as well. You want to keep your pressure fairly light. You don't want to etch into it too hard to kind of indent the paper. So just let it brush across the surface. So once you've mapped out where everything is and you're happy with the sort of position, then you can go along that same line to make it a lot thicker. This whisker's in front of everything else, so it really stands out. So you want your line to stand out as well. You want to keep the very tip of the whisker really fine and wispy. So I'd maybe make the line a little bit thicker up until the part where it starts to curve round. And then you might want to go in with a fine nib Uniball Posca pen in the shade White. I think we used this briefly for those really bright highlights in the eyes. The same can be used for little specks on the nose or whiskers. This is just a really good pen to use if you're wanting something to really stand out. So you just want to very lightly, and try and be as controlled as you can as well, just go along that line. And you might need to just smudge out the end with your finger. It's quite good like that because it's like a wet medium, it's like a paint pen. It means that it shows up really, really well over multiple layers of coloured pencil. Whilst it's still wet, you can dab it away with your finger, and once it's dry, you can almost use a sharp pencil to kind of crumble away the edges and just correct the shape. So yeah, it's a really good pen to have, especially for stuff like this. So I'm going to leave that there for now, and you want to do the same to the other whiskers, just make them stand out a little bit more. If you want a line to stand out a little bit more but not be as bright as the one above, then I'd recommend going in with the white Caran d'Ache Museum Aquarelle pencil and just going over that line, and again kind of flicking at the end. It still makes it a lot brighter. Might do the same just to the tip of this one as well. You could also do the same for any of those other whiskers that are behind these ones at the front. They're a bit more subtle. Kind of elongate some of those hairs from the face as well. There's some like white or like lighter fur tufts that are just coming down a little bit more than I probably thought. So just with that white, I'm loosely just adding a few highlights over the top of this really dark fur to make some tufts stand out without being too overpowering. I'm doing them in like a few different directions as well, so it looks like they're overlapping. Like that. Another technique you could use if you're wanting to achieve some softer highlights that are a bit more subtle, like we've got some round here on the bottom left hand section that are a bit brighter than, you know, the really dark fur. They do stand out, but they're not like overpowering. They're still kind of quite set back and dull. So you want to go in with your Tombow Mono Zero Elastoma eraser, and this is the ultra fine one, 2.3mm, and it really does make like all the difference in terms of having that control, and because it's so tiny you can literally draw in details with it. So very, very lightly, I'm just going to go in like erase over the same area just a couple of times, and then eventually it will start removing that pigment. Just going over the same area, trying to keep it quite loose. Like that, and then you could always go back in with one of your lighter colours like the Cold Grey 4 and just work into that area a little bit. Like that, so that's kind of brought in some of those highlights without being too overpowering. Just add a few more up here as well. You might need to keep like rotating your rubber as well, because it does pick up a lot of that pigment on the end. And then back in with that cold grey 4, just to work into what we've kind of erased. And you might just want to finish off going along some of these edges just to remove any more of that kind of really subtle grainy texture that we've got that it's picking up from the Fabriano paper underneath. And then we're pretty much done. Just going to finish off using the cold grey one, just to carry on blurring those very edges. Like that. So what I'm going to do now, there's like some little bits like around the edge that I just want to neaten up, so I'm going to use a rubber just to kind of bring that back so it's all nice and neat but still faded off nicely. So yeah, I'm going to do that now, and then I'll show you how it looks when it's all clean and finished. So I really hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. This, I think, is the 7th part, I'm not quite sure. But yeah, we've kind of split this into quite a few parts. It has been, you know, a really good practice if you are someone that struggles with either black fur or white fur, and kind of merging different colours of fur together as well. There's been quite a lot of techniques that we've included in this tutorial, and it's also been a really good opportunity to try working on drafting film if you've never used it before, or also using pan pastels, which is what we used right at the start. So it's had a bit of everything, this tutorial. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have had a go at this tutorial, then please tag me in any posts on social media. I would literally love to see your work. If you've got any questions at all, then please comment below and I will reply when I can. As with all the other parts of this tutorial, I've left the line drawing the full materials list and the reference photo in the video description below, along with a link to part 1 so you can follow through from the start if you want to give it another go, or you want to go back and sort of practice a different technique or whatever. But yeah, like I said, I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. I'll be back very, very soon with something new. If you've got any suggestions again, then please comment below so I can take that into account. But yeah, thank you for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and remember to subscribe to my channel to see more art related content, vlogs and tutorials. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you very soon.